"Remember how our roles reversed," said my former classmate, standing before me. Back in middle school, she was the picture of youth and health, but now her former self was nowhere to be seen. She smiled weakly, her figure emaciated. Why was she so kind to me? What happened to her that led to this state? I invited her to a café to find out what had happened to her since we graduated from middle school. What she shared was a past so heartrending that even as a listener, I found myself on the verge of tears. "My name is Jason, just a regular male student. I wish I could say that, but it's not that simple. My family is just my mom. We're a single-parent household. My dad didn't die. He left us for another woman. I barely remember his face, so it must have been a long time ago. Before I knew it, life without a dad became the norm. Since he left, my mom has been raising me on her own. She never complained and loved me more than anything, working every day. I wanted to repay her effort, so no matter how tough it got, I tried not to be a burden. But the harsh reality is that effort isn't always enough. If only it was just my dad who disappeared, but he took all our savings and bank bucks with him, probably to divert as much attention as possible to himself, likely for his mistress. Because of his selfish actions, we were really strapped for cash. Not just tight on money like other families, we lived in a dirt cheap apartment, usually having just one meal a day. It's not that we had nothing to eat, but we couldn't always have 3 full meals. This was when I was in middle school. My school didn't provide school meals. Lunch was always packed. But my mom worked from dawn till dusk and was too exhausted to even take a bath before falling asleep. There was no way she had time to make my lunch. Sure, she might have if I asked, but I couldn't bring myself to ask that of her. Working hard for my sake, but going without lunch during my growing years was hell. So I tried making lunch myself when she wasn't around. Minutes later, what sat in my lunchbox was as black as the darkest night. I thought it might suck me in if I touched it. Turns out I had 0 talent for cooking. My mom wasn't particularly fond of cooking, but could make decent meals. So I guess the one to blame is still my dad. I always brought a slice of bread with strawberry jam on it. Everyone else spread out lunches made by their parents or grandparents, chatting and enjoying their break. But I didn't belong there. Not because I was ostracized, but because their lunches were too dazzling. What everyone else had in their hands seemed unattainable for me. Watching them with envy, I felt incredibly small nibbling on bread. I couldn't stay in the classroom thinking, so I declined my friends' invitations and sought a place where I could be alone. My only companion was my bread. I had 2 options, the rooftop or behind the gym. Unfortunately, the rooftop was locked, so that was out of the question. It seems like hanging out on the rooftop during lunch is only a thing in TV drama series, so I decided to eat behind the gym. I could faintly hear the voices of students enjoying their break on the nearby playground, but no one ever came behind the gym. There I could savor my solitude, unseen by anyone. Until that day, I was late for lunch because of committee work. But my lunch was just a slice of bread, so it didn't take long to eat. I hurried to my usual spot behind the gym. There was someone already there. It was the first time I saw someone else here during lunch break, and it was a familiar female student. Her name was Sarah, a girl from my class. She was the daughter of the president of the Kensington Group. In other words, super rich, but she wasn't snobby or arrogant. She was just a normal, kind girl to everyone. We got close, just exchanged greetings. There was Sarah, squatting in front of a drain behind the gym, doing something. What is she doing here? I wondered, and moved to where I could see her hands. She was holding a lunchbox. She had it tilted open. It looked like it would fall, and just as I thought that, it happened. "What a waste," I blurted out without thinking. Sarah flinched at my voice. She turned quickly and hid her lunch behind her. She must have been surprised, probably didn't realize I was watching from behind. As she stumbled over her words, I immediately approached her. "I'm terribly sorry for startling you, but are you not going to eat that lunch?" She was the daughter of a company president, so I spoke to her in the most dignified language I knew. How I hoped, if you're not going to eat it. May I have it, please? I was famished from having gym class right before lunch. My stomach felt like it was stuck to my back. A slice of bread was too harsh for a growing middle school boy. Her lunch looked lavish, even from a distance, and the quantity seemed too much for a girl's lunch. If she was going to throw it away, I'd be grateful for even a half bite. Sarah was momentarily stunned by my eagerness. "Sure, you can have it." Maybe it was because of my refined language, but she agreed. "Really? May I truly have it?" I couldn't believe my ears and asked again. "Yeah, really," she said, and handed it to me. That's when I lost consciousness. When I came to, the lunchbox was empty, and the aroma of a tangy sauce lingered in my mouth. After finishing the meal, I thanked her. "You don't need to thank me. I didn't make it," Sarah said. "Did you forget your lunch today?" She peered into my face. No. Actually, I have bread, but that's all I have." Saying that, I took out clumsily sliced bread, just bread with strawberry jam. That's all. Her eyes widened with surprise as she asked, "That's not much for a boy, right? Are you on a diet?" Would someone on a diet devour someone else's lunch like a beast? I had never told anyone before, but I explained how my father disappeared and how my mother, working tirelessly, didn't have time to make lunch. Sarah listened silently until the end, then she spoke. "But, Chasen, you're amazing, making your lunch yourself. It even looks tasty," she complimented me. It might have been the first time someone other than my mother praised me, and I felt a sense of pride. As a thank you for sharing my story, Sarah began to talk about her own family. In summary, her stepmother wasn't her biological mother. Her real mother had passed away, and her current mother was her father's second wife. The stepmother was nice to Sarah in front of her father, but she was worse when he wasn't around. Even the lunchbox was part of that harassment. Despite knowing Sarah's small appetite, she packed it with too much food, including things Sarah disliked. If Sarah left anything, her stepmother would say, "How can you leave it when I work so hard to make this?" and would become hysterical. That's why she was trying to throw away the contents. I see. No wonder the quantity was so much. To my starving self, it was a feast, but for her, it was an overwhelming amount. "So, you haven't eaten lunch yet today?" She nodded silently to my question, embarrassed. I offered her my bread. "Here, please have it." It's wrapped in plastic, so I didn't touch it directly. She took the bread from my hand and smiled. "Thank you," she said, enjoying the bread. After that day, we started exchanging lunches. Our meeting place was behind the gym. We shared stories and complaints while eating. Though we were in the same classroom, we hadn't talked much before, but we found we had a lot in common. After eating, I'd take a short nap while Sarah drew in her sketchbook. She was in the art club and amazingly good at drawing. The sound of her pencil on the paper was soothing, and I enjoyed those moments. Life became smoother for me from there. I was able to go to a nearby public high school with decent academic standing, and my mom cried tears of joy when I got accepted. Sarah ended up attending a boarding school for young ladies, located a bit far from where I was. She wanted to get away from her mother as soon as possible, and I remember her being incredibly excited the day she got accepted. Her drawings are more aggressive than usual. Then came our last lunch together. The thought of not being able to exchange lunches with her anymore felt a bit sad. On her last day, Sarah was still drawing in her sketchbook. Looking at her profile, I considered confessing my fleeting feelings, but wanting to keep this youthful memory to myself, I suppressed my tender emotions and etched her image into my mind. It wasn't long after I started high school my mother remarried. My stepfather, in his first marriage, had been caring for his disabled parents and hadn't had the chance to meet someone until now. He wasn't exactly handsome, but he was sincere and kind, a good match for my mother. With a stable income from his job, my mother quit her exhausting work and found a full-time job with less burden. My stepfather maintained a comfortable distance with me, so we quickly developed a relationship where I could call him Dad. Thanks to his support, I smoothly progressed in my studies and got into a renowned university. I landed a job at a major corporation, leading a life far richer than anything I could have imagined as a child. A few years into my job, I was leading busy yet fulfilling days, but due to a transfer within the company, I had to move. While I was excited about starting a new life in a place somewhat distant from my parents' home, I wasn't without anxiety about living in an unfamiliar area. Once I had settled into my new home, I went out to get groceries. There was a charming small shopping district nearby where I usually did my shopping. Even after a few years of working, cooking remained a challenge for me. I had practiced enough to make spaghetti, but my specialty was still macaroni and cheese. My mother had tried to teach me, but I was utterly hopeless. It's okay not to force yourself to practice. There are plenty of fast food restaurants, thus I was consoled. At the end of the shopping street, I discovered a small hamburger shop. My mother had said fast food restaurant meals were fine, but I never really liked them. I was afraid that relying solely on fast food restaurant meals at my age might be bad for my health. This small hamburger shop, though modest, was clean and had delicious-looking hamburgers on display. They seemed homemade. Yes, homemade meals are the best. Perhaps because I hadn't had much experience with homemade meals in the past, I quickly developed a fondness for those made by human hands rather than those mass-produced in factories. The fact that the shop was run by an elderly lady was a bonus point. The atmosphere of an established store made the hamburgers look even more appetizing. Looking at the hamburgers on display, I saw a variety of options. There were ham hamburgers, meat and vegetable hamburgers, bacon hamburgers, and more. All looked delicious and were priced affordably. Even a student could afford to buy two. I picked up a hamburger. That's when I felt a sense of déjà vu. Not with the hamburgers, but with a picture on the wrapping paper. A subtle landscape painted casually on the wrapper. The wrapping paper was casually adorned with a delicate landscape painting. It was beautiful. It felt familiar, as if I had seen it somewhere before, but perhaps I was mistaken. I took the daily special hamburgers to the register. "Did you make these?" In response to my question, the elderly lady replied, No. I can't stand for long because of my bad legs, so I just mind the shop. But these are made by a beautiful lady, so they are really delicious." With a smile, she packed the hamburgers into a bag for me. Back home, the lunch tasted somehow nostalgic, like something I had eaten before. Since then, I became a regular at that small hamburger shop in the shopping district. Sometimes there was someone other than the elderly lady at the counter, apparently her husband. I wondered, why has my wife dressed up lately? "It's because of you, young man. he'd say with a hearty laugh while selling the hamburgers. Besides these two, I never saw anyone else at the hamburger shop. I wondered where the beautiful lady the elderly lady mentioned was. One day, as usual, I went to the hamburger shop, only to find a blind man shouting in front of the shop, "Refund my money. The lunch was terrible." The man was shouting furiously. The person apologizing to the man was neither the usual elderly lady nor her husband. It was a slender woman I had never seen before. Behind her, the husband was saying, "Bad? Maybe you have something wrong with your taste buds, not our lunch." He was arguing back just as fiercely. "Quiet down, will you?" The elderly lady scolded her husband. Indeed, it seemed like the husband's competitive nature was escalating the situation. I pulled out my cell phone and began speaking loudly. "Yes, that's right." At the exit of the shopping district, "There's a man causing a big scene here." That's what I said, of course. I wasn't really connected to anyone hearing my voice. The blind man quickly left the front of the hamburger shop. "Thank you, dear." This foolish husband of mine just had to say something, causing trouble for poor Sarah. The elderly lady nudged her husband. "It's the fault of that young punk for criticizing Sarah's cooking," he grumbled, heading back inside. I was honestly stunned. The fact that both of them referred to this slim woman as Sarah shook me. Sarah, that was the name of a girl from high school I was close to. The woman who had just been shouted at turned to me, surprised, and then said with a hint of sadness, "Jason, is that you?" She asked hesitantly, almost as if praying. Her expression seemed to convey a wish that I wasn't who she thought I was. "Yeah," I could only nod in response. "Do you remember me? I'm sorry for looking like this. It's like our roles have reversed," she smiled weakly. Seeing her smile, the image of Sarah from our school days overlapped. Though much thinner now, her face still bore traces of the old Sarah. "I remember you, but why are you here?" "This is quite far from our hometown," Sarah said. "It would be a long story. Today's been a lot, so I'm closing the shop early. You can go home now, Sarah," the elderly lady, having watched us, told her while waving her hand. She handed me a few hamburgers. They were oddly cold. After that, Sarah and I sat down at a nearby cafe to talk. What she shared was heartbreakingly unbelievable. Right after she started high school, her stepmother and father had a son. With the birth of a son, the presidency of the Kensington Group naturally shifted to Sarah's younger brother. As a result, Sarah's position in the Kensington family became considerably diminished, with some even deeming her as no longer useful. I was furious, but the story continued. After graduating high school, Sarah was forced into arranged marriages to strengthen the family's business. Her chosen spouse was a man 10 years her senior, the son of a business associate. Although he wasn't her type, she married him, thinking it was for the family's sake. However, her husband neglected her, spending every night out with his mistress. "Don't think our son is at fault for partying. You're the problem for failing to keep his heart." Sarah lived in a daily cycle of such demeaning comments. Finally, Sarah's husband, after having a child with his mistress, forced Sarah out of their home. Trying to return to her parents' home, Sarah found they wouldn't accept her back. Betrayed by her husband and abandoned by her family, she was left utterly depleted, both physically and emotionally. It was the couple who ran the hamburger shop who took her in. They gave me a place to stay when I had nowhere else to go, and they even let me work here. "They are really kind people," Sarah said, tears streaming down her face. Back then, she was an enviable, sparkling figure admired by everyone. Sarah was loved by all, treating everyone equally regardless of gender. I was appalled to learn that such a person had her educational opportunities taken away due to outdated values and had her life crushed by her husband and family. I'm really left with nothing. I feel completely empty, she said. I wanted to do something for her. After all, I still hadn't repaid the kindness I received from Sarah behind the gymnasium. Hey, Sarah, I've got something I want to discuss with you. I had a proposal for her. The major company I joined was a design firm founded by my stepfather. I was in charge of the media content department there. True, my joining the company was initially through my stepfather's connections. However, I found my fit in the design industry and consistently delivered results, so no one ever mentioned my connections anymore. I had even made some good friends there. Among them, I was particularly close with Kevin. Kevin was particularly good at delegating work and had a knack for knowing when to ease off. We were currently looking for an illustrator who could create background images for a project. Kevin usually excels in finding talented illustrators, but this time we were having trouble. We have illustrators, but finding one with a soft touch for background images, that's the issue. Can't you do something about it? I asked Kevin. Not just for any background artist, but for a creator with a gentle, warm touch. No compromises. After a serious sigh, he responded. All right, I'll bring you an amazing illustrator, one that'll impress even you. Too bad, Kevin. This time, I found an excellent illustrator before you did. Yes, my proposal to Sarah was for her to work as an illustrator with us. Sure enough, she was the one who had drawn the pictures on the hamburgers wrappers. Her illustrations were impressive enough to be an immediate asset to our company. How about working as an illustrator from home? Sarah quickly shook her head. My drawings are nothing special, just a hobby. I took out several of the hamburger wrappers I had saved every time I bought hamburgers. I carefully folded and preserved its wrapper. These are your drawings, right? I don't think the elderly couple could have drawn these. It's a waste to have such talent and not use it. The prints are just homemade, right? We'd really like you to join us, I begged her. I learned that she could also draw on a tablet. That made her even more desirable for our company. Still, she was hesitant. How about trying it out? If you don't like it, you can quit any time. We'll definitely pay you. She nodded in agreement. I could almost picture Kevin's frustrated face from afar. The next day, I brought Kevin to the hamburger shop. I can't stand that you found an illustrator before me. It's truly regrettable, he declared, eager to see that talented artist for himself. Standing in front of the hamburger shop, the elderly lady greeted us. Oh, you brought a friend today, she said, handing me several pieces of paper. She got really enthusiastic, it seems, she added. The paper she handed me had wrappers with softly rendered warm illustrations. As expected, they were excellent. Kevin peered over. What is this? He exclaimed, practically flipping over. Well, these are beautiful hand-drawn relish. Humans' evolution is amazing, he blurted out. At breakneck speed, this delicate touch, just what Jason was looking for. And there he goes, tripping over his words, leaving a flustered Kevin behind. I looked toward the back of the shop and saw Sarah peeking out, trying to hide. I begged her. I was eager to make a formal request right away. Sarah rushed out from the back. I'll take the job. Just please stop begging me like that, she said playfully, punching me. I was relieved that Sarah's involvement meant the project might succeed and that our connection wouldn't fade away. About a year into Sarah's contract, she quickly became a popular creator. How did you find her? You must have used up all your luck for the rest of your life, Kevin would say enviously, almost every day. But now I even found his jealousy comforting. I was proud of having discovered Sarah's talent as a creator. While continuing her part-time job at the hamburger shop, she was actively improving her skills and even planning her own exhibition. Apparently, Sarah's ex-husband started trying to get in touch with her, despite her smoothly sailing life. Ironically, it turned out the child he had with his mistress wasn't his. Serves him right after mistreating Sarah and driving her away. He was reportedly cut off from transactions with the Kensington Group. This was due to Sarah's father being furious over the excessively cold treatment she received. Consequently, he lost credibility in his industry, and his business rapidly deteriorated. The ex-husband, now thinking that reconciling with Sarah might mend ties with the Kensington family, had recently been stalking her. When Sarah consulted me about her ex, I switched to remote work. Additionally, I started working from a corner of the hamburger shop. As expected, her ex-husband showed up there. During a meeting, I heard arguing downstairs. "Come back. I'll give you a better life than this lousy hamburger shop." That must be the ex-husband's vile voice. "Stop it. Let go." Sarah's voice reached the second floor. I expected the hamburger shop's husband to come yelling any moment, but his voice never came, nor did the elderly lady's. After a moment of thought, I remembered, that's right, both the elderly couple were at the hospital today, leaving Sarah alone in the shop. I hurried downstairs. A shabby-looking man was grabbing Sarah's arm, trying to drag her away. I immediately intervened. "Who the hell are you?" "Outsider, Shinbutun." "Outsider, that's rude," I said, handing him my business card. "I'm Jason, Sarah's fiancé." I introduced myself. Seeing my business card, her ex-husband's face turned pale. In the past few years, I had been recognized for my achievements and had become the executive vice president of the company. Moreover, my stepfather's company had grown significantly, now even appearing in TV commercials. "I've consulted our company's legal advisor about you. If you turn around now and never show up in front of us again, we can let this stalking incident slide." After I gently explained, the ex-husband grumbled and then ran off. Sarah was initially surprised to learn that her father had influenced her ex-husband's downfall in the industry. She had thought it was her father who hadn't allowed her to return home. However, due to the recent stalking incident by her ex-husband, Sarah had an opportunity to talk with her family. There, she learned that it was her stepmother who had refused to let her return home. The stepmother had made this decision on her own and reported it to Sarah's father in a way that suited her. I apologized to Sarah for pretending to be her fiancé to get rid of her ex-husband. It actually helped. "I knew you were just trying to defuse the situation," she said, smiling brightly like she used to in our student days. Seeing that smile, I decided and took Sarah's hand. "I want to be your fiancé for real. I've liked you since middle school. I want to be with you with marriage in mind," I confessed right in front of the hamburger shop. Our wedding day was blessed with clear skies. The only guests were my parents and Sarah's father. Although it was a small ceremony attended only by the elderly couple who run the hamburger shop, it was a lovely occasion filled with smiles throughout. During the ceremony, Sarah and her father had a moment to talk alone, seemingly resolving their past conflicts. Her father was unaware of the stepmother's cold treatment towards Sarah. Upon learning the truth, he immediately made a phone call. "I'm sorry for all the hardship you've endured for so long. I can't divorce her, but I will leave that house and live separately. I'm sorry for making you feel lonely." Saying this, Sarah's father apologized to her, tears welling up in his eyes. Sarah was surprised to see her father's tears. For the first time, men cry too, you know. Praised him for realizing his mistake, Sarah, the hamburger shop owner said, concluding the ceremony. My mother and stepfather continue to have a great relationship. I want to build a family using these two as a role model. Living happily ever after with Sarah is my ideal. To live happily together, creating our own intimate memories. What a bright and beautiful future it seems. Maybe when we're older, we can run a hamburger shop like that elderly couple. I'll have Sarah draw pictures on the wrappers. I'm sure it will be popular. I smiled, looking at my wife in her simple yet elegantly lined wedding dress. Who would have thought a small hamburger shop in a shopping street would bring such a profound connection with Sarah? Suddenly, my wife's profile overlapped with the one I used to secretly admire in middle school. When I mentioned this to her, she said, "Actually, back then, I secretly drew you," as she smiled shyly. I felt an overwhelming love for her and wished for our happiness to last forever.
I noticed an on-site when I got back to my desk. There was a lunchbox in the trash can next to my desk. Not even I could remain silent. I asked, raising my voice, "Who did this? Who would act in this manner?" A close employee looked at me thoughtfully and didn't say anything. "Did I not tell you to? Eat your homemade meals outside, please. Nevertheless, you invite them inside. I dumped it in the trash because it stinks," my boss Kent stated. My rage at Kent's remarks gave way to utter amazement. The person with whom I had an appointment showed up before I could even begin to consider how to explain this. "I apologize for breaking up your enjoyable chat, Lucas. Has the thing that was promised arrived?" The director, Roy, stood behind me and said, "I've been looking forward to it since this morning and worked hard. It's been a while." Kent quickly got to his feet when he saw Rye standing there. "Lucas is my name. I've spent 25 years working for this company. I had assumed that I had been working hard at one employer, yet I am still a regular employee because I lost the promotion race. However, I have no special complaints about my current life because I am surrounded by my loving daughter and supportive wife. If I could ask for anything more, it would be to get promoted so that I could support my family better and make more money, especially now that my daughter is attending college. Even while it's my hope, things don't usually work out that way in real life. It appears that my coworker Kent received the promotion, and as of April, I will report to him. As a new hire to the position, Kent treated us with humility during the first few months. But with time, his attitude started to shift. We were unable to keep up with him as he began to lord over us, openly disparaging and demeaning our character. Kent used to pick on younger workers, but lately he started acting aggressively toward me, a former drinking companion. "Hey Lucas, you know the materials are prepared for the meeting this afternoon?" "I have not yet seen the draft," he stated, sounding incredibly patronizing. I told Kent straight up, "No, I wasn't even informed there's a meeting this afternoon, in spite of how uneasy I felt." I now reported to Kent. Despite feeling self-conscious about what I had said, I gave Kent a courteous response. Immediately after I spoke, there was a huge noise. Kent had given him a desk kick. Then, his spittle flying, he yelled, "What are you talking about? The reason you remain a regular employee at your age is due to your poor task management skills. Just to be clear, listen. Today at 2:00 p.m., there will be a meeting to discuss modifications to future business performance. To increase productivity, you must suggest topics. By 1:00 p.m., you must have viewed the preliminary materials. Since individuals from many departments will also be present, it is essential. Make careful to finish it on schedule." I was taken aback by the unexpected outcry. I looked at the clock, which showed 9:00 a.m. Regardless of how quickly I worked, the paperwork would remain unfinished. I had to propose that Kent and I work on it together. Then he said something astounding. "All right, I'm depending on you. I'm going to have a smoke break and won't be returning for a bit," he replied, tucking a cigarette into his breast pocket and walking out of the room. I need to recharge for the big job this afternoon. Although Kent had always taken lengthy cigarette breaks, they got significantly worse after he was promoted to manager and occasionally stopped during work hours. It was likely he would not return till noon on this day of all days. Upon seeing my pitiful image on the computer screen, I let out a heavy sigh. I worked frantically to compile the required information and produce a coherent, proposal-worthy document, despite its many flaws. It was time for lunch break by the time I managed to get it looking decent. I was very tired after working nonstop for hours on end. I felt my hunger together with a sense of relaxation. I looked through my luggage and realized that, of all days, I had forgotten my lunchbox. I had forgotten everything in the morning bustle. However, today was unique. A figure with bundles of items in its arms started to sprint toward me as I was anxiously waiting at the visitor's entrance. "Daddy, I apologize for keeping you waiting. Though it took longer than I anticipated, I'm still in time, right? I just had a lunch break, so everything is okay." I said, "Thank you very much." My daughter Katie was breathing heavily and was carrying the lunchbox. She began preparing her own lunches after enrolling in college. "Could you make one for me too?" I asked jokingly, and she nodded. Since then, I've been bringing her cooked lunches to work every day, and her cooking has really improved thanks to culinary classes. She was bringing a lunch from her cooking class today, which happened to fall on my lunch break. A recognizable voice caught my attention as I was about to head back to the office carrying the lunchbox in my backpack. "Hello, and who might this be?" "Hello, Kent," I answered as Kent evaluated Katie and me after coming back after a lengthy cigarette break. I answered in a forced calm, disliking how he evaluated Katie. "Never have the two of you met. This is Katie, my daughter, who just enrolled in college this year." Katie said, "Hello. My father always says good things about you." Kent grinned the once he realized the woman in front of him was my daughter. "You appear to be Lucas's daughter. I assume your dad is exhausted at home as well. Despite being slow at work, he usually always departs on schedule. Considering how poorly he's doing at work, I'm concerned that he won't be able to sleep." Katie looked away from Kent without saying anything, maybe too hurt to reply. I wanted to respond, but naturally I didn't have the guts because I'd never thought of myself as a skilled worker. Katie seemed to take offense at my lack of response and was feeling sorry for me, so Kent decided to take a different tack. "By the way, I noticed you earlier getting something. What were you given?" "A lunchbox." "My daughter made it and brought it for me," I said. "Is that accurate? I've heard that as of late, you've been bringing homemade meals every day. I thus make this request." Kent waited for me to come. "Would you mind having lunch outside going forward? To be honest, it stinks and is making work difficult. If it were just me, I could put up with it, but other workers have voiced similar complaints. I can't just disregard it as their manager, right? I apologize, but kindly." Kent muttered this while acting as though it was hard to speak. Clearly, the noise was turned down so Katie could hear. "I apologize for the interruption." With a momentary facial contortion, Katie remarked, "I'll be leaving now. I'll be walking away." She then bit her lip. It hurt me so much to see Katie's almost emotional face. She's normally such a vibrant person. Knowing that Kent was my supervisor, she must have held back. I was feeling even more pitiful. When I came home, I'd tell her that Kent's comments were unfounded lies. I let Kent in via the door after having that thinking. I set my luggage down at my desk and waited a bit. I was dying to open the lunchbox, but I couldn't eat quite yet because of an earlier appointment. I made the decision to go to the bathroom first, packed up my stuff, and left. After just a few minutes, they returned to find an astonishing scene. The lunchbox Katie had packed was in the trash can next to my desk, empty. Not the receptacle I often utilize. I had to say something. I asked, raising my voice, "Who did this? Who would act in this manner? My colleague looked at me thoughtfully without saying anything. It seemed like one of Kent's practical jokes. Why would you do this, Kent? It was really labor-intensive to make. This is excessive. I balled my fists and asked Kent a question. Too much, you say? Kent asked, seeming amused. That's where I stand. I told you to eat your cooked lunches outside, didn't I? But you allowed them inside. I was so shocked and infuriated by Kent's statements that I put it in the trash because it smelled. You're done, I declared. What? What do you mean by done, and who do you believe you're speaking to? Kent appeared to have reached a sudden agreement. In fact, that stench-filled, tasteless lunch was not something that belonged in the trash. I ought to have covered it with plastic wrap and newspaper. The spring onion omelette looks and smells awful. What a mistake I made, Kent exclaimed as he laughed aloud. The individual I had a meeting with showed up before I could come up with a suitable reply. I apologize for cutting into your enjoyable chat. Lucas, is this the item you promised? The director, Rye, stood behind me and said, I worked hard today. I've been looking forward to it since it's been a while. As soon as Kent saw Ree, he quickly got up. Hi, Ree. How are things doing for you? Why have you come here? Rye's presence seemed odd to Kent because they didn't typically work in the same room or even had lunch together. Well, I did have a gift for Lucas. I'll see him for lunch today as I promised. Why with Lucas? Kent gave himself a scratchy, humiliated expression. It's a long story, to be sure. Lucas, hurry up and let's head to the cafeteria. Regarding that, Rye, Kent gave me a frown as I started to talk. He must have been afraid of what I would say, but there was no way he could keep it a secret. Kent tossed one of my daughter's sandwiches that she had brought earlier into the trash. Not ideal, but I still have mine in my purse. Instead, would you mind eating that one? Ree's once calm countenance abruptly shifted as he took a quick look at the garbage container I indicated. He recognized the lunchbox and food there. Rye turned to face Kent and spoke seriously. Is what he said accurate, Kent? Did you handle his meal in this manner? Wait, Rye? Kent fumbled for an explanation. Lucas has been bringing his lunch every day, and the scent has been reported by multiple staff members. I'm not sure how his daughter does the preparations, but you get the idea. The other food is unfit for consumption, and the omelette with spring onions even has a bad stench. Ray, eating it would have been detrimental to your health. It's almost a blessing that it was discarded. Kent's ignorance caused his excuses to exacerbate the situation. Seething with rage, Rye spoke dignifiedly. What do you consider to be food? This is someone's lunch, even if it were yours. Something you make for someone else is infused with feelings you may not see. It is almost unbelievable to me that someone who lacks comprehension may devote their entire being to their task. I should reevaluate if promoting you to manager was the correct move. Kent shot up in protest, his face getting redder. Hold on. I'm proud of my work ethic and never let someone down. To compare this occurrence to my performance at work is ridiculous. In fact, I threw away the lunch to make the office a better place to work. It might have been a bad approach, and going forward, I'll be careful. But Lucas also needs direction on his unhygienic lunches. Reese seemed shocked that Kent was still trying to point the finger at me. Let me say this. It's impossible that Lucas's lunch was unsanitary or improperly made. How can you be so sure? Kent inclined forward, dubious of Ree's assurance. My wife teaches a culinary class that is attended by Katie, Lucas's daughter. My wife is certified in food safety and cleanliness, of course, and she made today's lunch there. Are you implying that my wife cooks incorrectly or handles things carelessly? It's also disappointing to disrespect the veggies we raise in our garden, Bry said, putting a pale flush on Kent's face. However, Kent retaliated, failing to learn his lesson. You're not saying, Rye, that I should be demoted and he should be promoted. I'll never forget this exchange of ideas combining personal and work-related issues in this way. I'll sue if it influences HR decisions, Ray firmly replied. Naturally, personal and professional problems are not combined. Now that we've covered this ground, let's summarize everything. Ray said, keeping things hidden won't satisfy anyone, before telling Kent about his own situation. Ray and his wife's relationship deteriorated as their child became a working adult and they spent more time together over unimportant issues. Ray tried to strengthen their marriage after ending the custom of cooking him handmade lunches every day because of small arguments. When Ray found out that his daughter took culinary classes, he urged Katie and me to ask to be taught how to pack lunches at that cooking class. I was going to pack 2 sandwiches and bring them to work. Katie was to inform Rye's wife that she would want to have lunch with me. She was to pack 1 meal for herself and Rye's wife for the other. I eagerly accepted this proposal, and Katie and I carried out the strategy. Originally, we were going to share the lunches that Katie and Rye's wife had brought. Kent snorted and replied, I understand the situation, after hearing the account. I understand your rage at the thoughtless disposal of the packed lunches, but you seem to be confusing personal with professional issues. For work effectiveness, it's crucial to keep some level of focus even during breaks. It's unbelievable that someone in a position of authority can't take their work seriously. Even at break time, Kent continued to criticize Ray and me without any remorse. Another worker came bustling over. Ray, I have been trying to find you. I apologize for interrupting your break, but a manager is being demanded in response to a complaint. I've placed them on hold due to the seriousness of the allegation. A company like ours that values the community cannot afford to lose trust. Please take care of this. We need you to. Ray answered the phone and took care of the conversation after giving a quick explanation. He looked at me and Kent and apologized over the phone, his face growing glum as he heard. Ray appeared distressed, unsure of what had transpired. At last, the call was cut off. What were you doing this morning? Ray spoke with a lot of venom in his voice. My back straightened. I was fully occupied making documents for this afternoon's performance improvement meeting, as instructed by Kent. Why did you act in that way? That's what Kent does. Besides, the meeting is next week, not today. And I wanted to know where you were this morning, Ray explained. I breathed a sigh of relief when I realized the documents weren't needed today, and that I wasn't the target of the rage. Kent, on the other hand, was obviously perspiring. I visited our clients this morning. Another crucial aspect of our work is fostering relationships with the neighborhood, Kent retorted. It's peculiar, Ray muttered. Then he talked as though reprimanding a young offender. You must tell the truth to me. What on earth were you up to this morning? I was out visiting our clients, Kent restated. That's enough, Ray interrupted to give the phone call's explanation. A person in our corporate vehicle was observed smoking in a non-smoking area, littering, and exiting a casino in a foul attitude. When someone pointed it out to them, they were chastised. Is this familiar to you? Clearly concerned, Kent shook his head, dodging Ray's stare. Well, the caller was able to recall the license plate and the face. The drive recorder would have captured their face, and the parking lot film allows us to identify who it was. It's interesting that they also brought up the brand of cigarette, which just so happens to match the one you have in your pocket. I'll go apologize since we don't yet know who it is. Even though it wasn't his fault, Ray apologized to me for the packed lunch situation and stated, I'll find out who it was, before exiting the room. For a split second, Kent appeared as though he intended to stop Ray, but all he did was stand there, looking shocked. Kent was forced to confess after it was eventually established that he was the one in the casino and that he had seen the disc recorder tape. Sadly for Kent, the individual he had screamed at was a cherished customer, which meant that his behavior constituted a serious problem for the business. Not content with being demoted, Kent ultimately resigned, restoring harmony to the workplace. In the interim, HR noticed my constant work excellence and elevated me to manager, convincing me that his influence had nothing to do with anything. Ray complimented me. In any case, I was even more driven at work. Ray invited me to his house to celebrate my promotion. Ray's freshly constructed mansion, which doubled as a culinary class location, was brimming with his wife's affection. I encouraged Katie to join me for the event, and the four of us, along with Ray and his spouse, assembled around the table. Considering Katie's outgoing personality, the evening was quite exciting. "Ray, this omelette is the best, isn't it?" Maybe because of the drink, Ray had a really positive attitude and his cheeks were rosy as he talked. "Nothing in the world tastes as good as this. The lucky guy who marries Katie will get to enjoy such delicious food every day." Does her father become upset when she says this? Ray laughed heartily, but Katie gave him a condescending look in return. "Oh, Ray, your wife prepared this omelette. You're incredibly fortunate to have such delectable meals every day." "Are you serious? To be unable to detect my cooking's flavor?" Ray's wife grinned and added, "I'll have to bring your favorite omelette and a packed lunch again starting tomorrow." We both grinned at Ray's delighted wife, Ray, and me. It's possible that Katie didn't notice, but Ray could definitely identify his wife's omelette. Ray's wife cooked this omelette with green onions, which I detest, but he loves it. "Ray, how about we swap our packed lunches tomorrow?" I recommended. In an attempt to conceal his humiliation, Ray said, "No, I adore my wife's lunchboxes more than anything," in response to my suggestion. "I'll stick to my own, even though it's a wonderful offer." I recalled Ray's expression upon realizing his beloved omelette had been tossed into the garbage. It's difficult to imagine how furious he was at the time. Ray's expression before then was nothing like it was now. Furthermore, a kind expression was on the faces of all those seated at the table.